Right now on Upfront.
Budget battle lines drawn.
All of those things, dead on arrival.
It ain't going to work. They're not going to get reelected.
Governor Tony Evers unveiling his big spending plan, tax cuts, tax hikes, new spending across the board.
We made difficult decisions and saved where we could.
Now the hard work ahead.
We'll take his irresponsible budget, turn it into a responsible budget.
Republicans promising to start from scratch. Public hearings now just weeks away. Our guest this Sunday, Democratic State Senator Kelda Roys, member of the powerful Budget Writing Committee, and Republican State Senator Van Wanggaard, chair of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee.
Then the former ambassador speaks.
So now I have to say, and this might sound caustic to some,
Tom Barrett, the former Milwaukee mayor and U.S. ambassador to Luxembourg, now here with us. The first month of the Trump administration and what the world really thought of President Biden in his final month.
And draft activated.
We are planning for all of the contingencies.
New revelations ahead of Green Bay hosting the NFL Draft this April, and more potential state money en route to Green Bay.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Dead on arrival, reckless, and a liberal wish list on steroids. Just a few of the words Republicans uttered moments after Democratic Governor Tony Evers' budget address.
The governor firing back, calling it, quote, politically stupid for Republicans to rip it up.
And so start budget negotiations. The governor unveiling a massive spending plan, nearly $119 billion, a roughly 20% spending increase. New spending on everything from public schools to health care and new road projects.
The governor also proposing $2 billion in tax relief for the middle class while creating a new tax bracket and proposing a tax increase for the wealthiest Wisconsinites while capping tax breaks for manufacturers.
With that, we begin with Democratic State Senator Kelda Roys, a member of the state's powerful Budget Writing Committee. Senator, a lot of work ahead for you. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, Matt.
Let's start right there. A 20% increase in spending from the governor. Is this budget responsible coming from Governor Evers?
It absolutely is. And I would go so far as to say, let's look at the context here. This budget helps repair some of the damage done by 15 years of Republican incompetence and financial mismanagement, debasing our tax structure and underfunding our most critical public services like K-12 schools and the university.
The budget now goes front and center before the Joint Finance Committee. Well, what is the role of Democrats on that committee during this budget cycle?
Well, I think it's to make sure that the people of Wisconsin know what is in the Democratic budget proposal and what it means if Republicans just throw it in the garbage as they have done the last three budget cycles and instead focus solely on tax cuts for the wealthy.
You mentioned the taxes. Let's look at some of these numbers. The governor wants to create a new tax bracket, an income tax bracket, a tax increase for married or joint filers earning $1 million or more, $500,000 individually. Are you on board with that new tax bracket?
Absolutely. I mean, we have functionally flattened our tax structure so that it's really no longer progressive. The idea that somebody who's making $25,000 a year has the same kind of capacity or need as somebody who's earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year is ridiculous. And it's time for the wealthiest among us who have benefited the most from what the state has provided to pay their fair share. And it's not just individuals, but it's big corporations too.
Why not work to reduce taxes for everyone across the board?
Well, because we need to have public services. If we just cut taxes for everybody, including the wealthiest, who have, by the way, have already enjoyed many years of far reduced taxes, then we don't have the money to keep our public schools open. And what we have seen across the state is that year after year, our local governments, like our cities, our counties, and our schools, have to go to referendum. They have to ask property taxpayers to raise taxes on themselves just to keep the lights open on. And that's just not fair to our kids. It's not fair to all of us that deserve to have, clean, safe roads in the winter, garbage pickup, water coming to our house that we can drink out of the tap. All of these things require public investment, and we all need to pay for that through taxes. But what the governor has proposed is tax relief for middle class and those who are working to get into the middle class, and finally asking the very wealthiest among us to start paying their fair share.
After the governor's budget address this past week, Republicans said that they would introduce a standalone tax cut bill. Is this something that Democrats would actually consider?
I think it's incredibly irresponsible to be thinking about another big tax giveaway to the wealthiest among us. Republicans, it's like everything that they see is a nail. They've only got one tool. It is tax breaks for the wealthiest. And to do that outside of the context of the state budget would be incredibly irresponsible, and I would not support that. We also, I think, have to be very mindful of what's happening in Washington. The chaos and confusion created by Trump's unconstitutional and illegal acts to try to freeze federal funds is having a devastating impact on Wisconsin families. And we've got to make sure that as a state, we are prepared to step forth and help when families are hurting.
As part of the governor's tax cut package, he's proposing no more tax on tips. Was this inspired by President Trump?
I don't know the inspiration for it, but I do know that the tipped minimum wage is $2.33 an hour, and that is unconscionable. I'm of the view that we should not have a tipped minimum wage, and that in fact even our $7.35 minimum wage is totally inadequate and should be raised. And I think Democrats are united on that front in saying that nobody who is working should be making $2.33 an hour or $7.35 an hour. That's just not sustainable in today's economy.
The governor's plan would also add close to 900 full-time jobs. Republicans say that they want to and that they're going to reduce the size of government. Are hundreds of additional state jobs needed in Wisconsin?
Well, I think they certainly are. When you look at the demand that is placed on our public workforce and what it means for people, I mean, do you want to go to the DMV and have hours-long lines, or do you want to be able to go in and out? Do you want to have technology that allows you to do basic government things quickly with a click of a button, or do you want to have to drive 2 hours to get that taken care of? One of the things we've seen with Republicans is that they're penny wise and pound foolish. They have worked so hard to reduce the headcount in state government, but at the same time, we've seen an explosion in private contracting, which, by the way, is more expensive and less accountable to the taxpayers. In my view, that's a bad deal. We want to have public employees that are completely accountable to all of us as taxpayers, and we want the expertise that having a skilled workforce can provide.
The budget battle now officially underway. Democratic member of the Joint Finance Committee, Senator Kelda Roy. Senator, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The governor is also proposing massive criminal justice reform. His plan would close Green Bay Correctional Institution by 2029, modernize Waupun Correctional, and turn Lincoln Hills and Copper Lake into adult facilities. There is no new prison in the governor's plan, but the governor says it all hinges on the entire proposal coming together, including finally closing the Lincoln Hills Youth Prison. A new youth facility in Milwaukee is now under construction. The DOC says it will be ready to open next year.
Republican State Senator Van Wanggaard is chair of the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. He joins us now. Senator, good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning to both of you. Pleasure to be here today.
We'll get to the overall prison plan in a second. I'm curious just on the overall all-state budget. The governor has said, listen, Republicans have cut for years, so now we have to spend a 20% increase in this budget. What do you make of that argument?
Wow. As we started going through and looking at the numbers, they just didn't add up. So this is fuzzy math. As my staff went through some of those cost centers, I think it added up to about $9 billion more than what his department heads were even asking for. And like we discussed before we came on the show here, it's like when you're a department head, you're asking for everything. You want the moon.
Part of the governor's plan, he says, is $2 billion in tax relief targeting the middle class. Some of that includes holding or reducing property taxes, increasing the personal exemption, other sales tax exemptions. Is this something Republicans can get behind?
Actually, I think there's going to be some proposals coming out from the Republican caucus here in the next week or two. And you will see I think a pretty in-depth tax package that is going to give those dollars back to the taxpayer, and hopefully, my one thing that I'm pushing for is to take the retirement tax and put that off the plate here, because I think we lose a lot of senior citizens to other states.
That's going to be a standalone tax bill ahead of the budget negotiations.
Yes.
I want to ask about the governor's prisons plan now. First, broadly, just your thoughts on the plan that was presented.
So we chatted with some of the governor's staff this past Saturday before he did his budget address, and we got some detail, but not a lot of detail. So we still don't know the strategy in this plan. I mean, our main thing is to take Lincoln Hills and close that down at Copper Lake. So those two facilities are closed down. If we do nothing right now, that we should be able to draw those individuals that are currently there, about 65, I think, males and about a dozen females. I mean, we should be able to draw those down to 0. But the strategy of closing Green Bay, we don't know where that's going to fit in the timeline. We don't know what the governor is thinking as far as funding this. We have a almost $5 billion surplus that is sitting there, and those dollars should go back to, I think, to the taxpayer. And I think that'll happen if they use some of that one-time money to maybe fund this prison project.
From what you know of the plan, from what you've heard from the governor and his office so far, is there anything that is 100% dead on arrival in the prisons plan?
I don't know, because I don't know what their entire thought is here. Our caucus hasn't really discussed this yet because we just got his overview of what he's presented with the budget this past week. We're still going through those details, and a lot of the details for this prison reformation isn't, detailed in that process of how you do it, what the strategy is going to be on how you get there. How do you close one? I mean, we talked about this too. We closed Green Bay. There's a couple thousand prisoners there. They got to go someplace, and turning the spigot on and just letting people out early. That is not going to fly. That is definitely dead.
Part of the plan focuses on reducing the prison population and expanding the earn release program for nonviolent offenses. Is that a good goal?
Well, I think it's always a good goal to try to get people back into the community. It's not a bad idea to get more people into the community, but looking at the governor's plan as we went through it and looked at it, it looks like cutting in half that supervision time that they'd be supervised. Well, that's not going to happen. I don't think that the Republican caucus is going to say, okay, we got a way to open the spigot up here, like I said earlier, and just let people out so that they don't pay what their consequences. So I think that's going to have a little bit of work. But we're going to start the discussion. That's the most important part, is get a discussion going.
And where the governor is, he is not proposing building a new prison. Does a new prison need to be built in this overall plan?
I believe it does, yes. I mean, we can go and try to upgrade, but like Waupun as an example, they've got two cell block buildings that are satellites. They're separate from the main complex. And part of that game plan is to raise those two and build new pods that would be able to be put into use with minimum staffing, and they'd be safer for the individuals that would be doing that staffing, but it'd be safer for the prisoners. It would be, better lit. It would be just a better facility to allow for helping those individuals to become better inmates.
A potential ray of hope towards compromise. State
Yes.
Senator Van Wanggaard, like always, we'll bring you back. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Coming up, the now former U.S. Ambassador Tom Barrett back in Wisconsin, the longtime Milwaukee mayor and U.S. Ambassador to Luxembourg now with us.